Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. Well, are Israel and Iran about to shake the world? I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. But first, I want to turn your attention to two things, starting with this right here. So if you go to brittgillette.substack.com, you'll see the latest article that went up yesterday. It's titled, "Does the Demonic Olympic Opening Ceremony Really Surprise You?" For those of you who know what I'm talking about, and I think most of you do by now, on Friday they opened the Olympics in Paris with really a demonic, blasphemous display. But I address in here, well, this isn't something new. We've been seeing a lot of this. And what should our reaction be to this? We need to understand what we're dealing with first, and then we can have the proper reaction to it. So if you haven't had a chance to read this article, head over to brittgillette.substack.com and check that out. Also, again, I'm recording this on Tuesday night. You're probably seeing it on Wednesday, hopefully, when it comes out. If so, and you see that in time, there will be a live prophecy roundtable at 7 p.m. Eastern Time that includes me, John Holler, Scott Townsend, Patrick Wood. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, advanced technology, transhumanism. Most of all, we're going to talk about why you should have hope here in these what seem like dark days if you don't have the proper perspective. But if you have the proper perspective, you have all the reason in the world to be hopeful. So guys, make sure to check that out. Again, this will be live. If you want to join the chat, feel free to do that. You'll want to catch it live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're watching this, what should be today, Wednesday, July 31st, if you miss it live, you'll be able to catch the recording. Just head over to Britt Gillette, hit that live tab, and you'll be able to see it. This is only on YouTube, so if you're on Rumble or Odyssey or Substack, that's usually where you watch the videos, then I'll send out links to those, and I'll post the recorded session afterwards to all of those channels. So again, if you get a chance, check us out live at 7 p.m. So, the title of what we're talking about is, are Israel and Iran about to shake the world? And what I mean by that is, are we about to see an epic conflict between Israel and Iran? And I believe the answer is yes. I believe it's inevitable. I believe we may see very well that conflict is, in the world's eyes, Israel versus Hezbollah. But I believe it's the same as Israel versus Iran, because Iran controls Hezbollah. Iran supplies, trains, funds Hezbollah. And we're going to talk about why I believe that's inevitable. But first, we need to set the stage and talk about what's going on right now. So I want to take a look at this Zero Hedge article, which actually isn't from right now. If you look at this, this is from July 4th. So it's almost a month old, but we'll see why this is important in just a moment to help set the stage of what is going on, why this is escalating. So this is titled, "Threat Map Shows Hezbollah's Drone Ranges as Conflict Area Spillover Risk Rise." It says Hezbollah's use of drones is a nightmare for Israel's defenses. Difficult to track and identify, these drones can overwhelm and evade even the most advanced air defense systems. This threat was realized on Sunday, again, over a month ago, when more than a dozen IDF soldiers were injured in a drone attack. Bloomberg reported on Sunday, again a month ago, that 18 soldiers were injured in a drone attack by Hezbollah. The drone assault in the northern Golan Heights comes as the Israel-Hamas conflict appears to be broadening. And it definitely has. It says tens of thousands of civilians, that's something to keep in mind, have fled the area between southern Lebanon and northern Israel due to skirmishes between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah fighters. According to Yoni Tobin, an analyst for the hawkish think tank Jewish Institute for National Security of America, which has ties to Israel's government and military, the Iran-backed terror group has launched at least 130 suicide drones at Israel in June. Since the war began, the group launched 390 drones at Israel in an outbreak that started in October of last year. And they put this chart here. I'm going to make it bigger. So this will give you an idea of how this is escalating. So this is October, then November, December. Things got a little bit quiet at the beginning of the year, but now we're seeing 130 strikes took place in June. Now, if you remember, we were just reading an article from July 4th. That's where this was embedded from. I want to take a look at later in the same day. We go to Zero Hedge again. Same day, July 4th, but several hours later, new fires erupt in Israel after Hezbollah sends 200 rockets and drone swarms. It says large wildfires are once again raging in northern Israel's Galilee region after on Thursday, again a month ago, Hezbollah launched a particularly intense barrage of 200 rockets as well as drone swarms. So again, let's go back and look at this chart. All of June was 130. Here we are at 200 on the 4th day of July. And I tried to see if that organization had an updated chart showing where we stood through July. That's not up yet. Probably it'll be up in the next day or two since we're heading into August. But the point is, we're definitely seeing these attacks escalate. So we're seeing an escalation in conflict, in warfare between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, let's take a look at this story right here. This is from AP. It says, drone strike by Yemen's Houthi rebels kills one person and wounds at least 10 in Tel Aviv. Again, this is an older story. And my purpose isn't to recount the news. I know probably all of you are aware of these stories and that these things took place, but it's to set the table for what we're going to talk about. It says an Iranian-made drone sent by Yemen's Houthi rebels struck Tel Aviv on Friday, leaving one person dead and at least 10 wounded in the group's first lethal strike into Israel. The aerial strike rumbled through the center of the city near the U.S. Embassy, causing shrapnel to rain down and spreading shards of glass over a large radius. The hit in Israel's biggest city was startling because the drone appeared to have crossed much of the country through the multi-layered air defenses that have intercepted almost all of the drones and rockets that Yemen's Houthis have been launching toward Israel since the Gaza war began. It says most have failed to even reach Israel's southernmost city, much less Tel Aviv. So we see this escalation in attacks from Hezbollah in the north, from the Houthi rebels from the south. Both of these groups are funded, equipped, trained. They are proxies of Iran. So ultimately, this is Iran waging war against Israel. Now, I want to take a quick time out away from what we're talking about here to show you that when I looked up this article, so I thought, okay, I want to reference this event that happened. So I went to Google and I looked up Houthi strike on Tel Aviv. And I want to show you what I got when I did that. So I put in Houthi strike on Tel Aviv, news stories, and here's the results we got. At least 6 killed, Houthis say, as Israeli airstrikes hit Yemen. Israel strikes Yemen. Israeli jets bomb sites in Yemen. Then finally we get to Israel says Yemen's Houthis modified drone and unprecedented Tel Aviv strike. Again, I would say, well, why? What do you mean they would say? They did, right? Then it says again, Tel Aviv hit by drone attack claimed by Iranian-backed Houthis. Israel strikes Yemen. Israeli military says it has struck Houthi targets. Israel strikes Houthi-controlled port in Yemen. Israel strikes Houthi targets. Israel defense minister says country will settle the score after Houthi drone attack on Tel Aviv, right? So if you notice this is the first page of results on Google for Houthi strike on Tel Aviv, and all but one, maybe two of these are framed in such a way that Israel is striking Yemen. Israel is the aggressor. Israel strikes Yemen. Israeli jets bomb sites, right? So I go to page 2 of those results, and I get really what I was looking for, that specific event. And it says, well, drone strike by Yemen's Houthi rebels. Drone strikes Tel Aviv. Houthi drone strikes Tel Aviv. Strike on Tel Aviv draws global attention. Yemen's Houthis launch drone strike on Israel. Houthis launch deadly drone strike on Tel Aviv. Houthi rebels claim responsibility for deadly drone strike in Tel Aviv. Israel investigates security failures around deadly Tel Aviv drone strike. Houthis deadly Tel Aviv drone strike. Right? So this is not by accident, guys. This is the same search results. But if you notice, it's not by coincidence that the first page of results all paint Israel as the aggressor. Israel strikes Yemen. So the story I was looking for was the drone strike by the Houthis on Tel Aviv. Instead, what they gave me on the first page was results for Israel's counterstrike as a result of that, making it look like Israel's the aggressor. And it's clear they did that because as soon as you go to page 2, I get the results that I was looking for, which was that original news story that the Houthis struck Tel Aviv. Now keep in mind, the overwhelming majority of people will never see page 2 of the search results. The top 3 results in a search engine get the overwhelming majority of the clicks and the traffic. So most people will never see page 2, and this is just a subtle reminder of how technology is being used to manipulate us. It's being used to determine what news we see, how we frame a certain event. And many of you have probably seen in recent days when people typed into Google assassination attempt on Trump, and they had the autofill, it came out TRUM, assassination attempt on Truman, and there was nothing in the results about Trump until you get that specific phrase in there. So the Google and other search engines, these big tech companies, they're manipulating what you see. It's very important that you seek out directly credible news sources that you know of and go directly there and try to avoid big tech as much as you possibly can. But anyway, that's a side note to what we were just talking about. So back to what we're talking about. We have this escalation of attacks by the Houthis, again, a proxy of Iran, and Hezbollah against Israel. And that leads us into this story from the Jerusalem Post. It says, expert discusses Hezbollah's new EMP weapon. It says the Kuwaiti newspaper Al Jarida reported that Iran has supplied Hezbollah and other Iranian proxy forces with electromagnetic ordnance, which can disable communication systems and shut down radars. And they talked to this CEO of a defense company, and he explains a little bit of what this means. And we'll talk about how this relates to this in just a second. But it says, what is electromagnetic ordnance? He says, well, describing electromagnetic ordnance is like talking about something no one has ever seen, but everyone understands exists and is present in reality. In our case, on the geopolitical and military chessboard of the Middle East, in essence, imagine lightning striking the building you live in, not hitting a lightning rod or an antenna, but the entire building, causing all the electrical panels, water heaters, water and electrical systems, household appliances, computers, TV systems, even life-saving medical systems to stop working. It's like a power outage, but in this case, the systems can also burn out from the inside, like in an electrical short. He says, I suspect the threat is more focused on bases, strategic facilities, desalination systems, and the Israeli power grid. However, it's impossible to say precisely, as such a weapon has never been used in history, so there's no sources or references to learn from. He says the physics are the same in any way they choose to use such a capability, but I suspect the model will likely be in the form of a low-flying UAV, much like the Iranian Houthi attack, which struck near the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv last weekend, only instead of a kinetic warhead, the front can be armed with an electromagnetic pulse activation mechanism, which is triggered during the flight and emits an EMP upon contact with the target. So here they would be able to specifically target a base, a facility, a part of the power grid, a desalination plant, and specifically take that target down. And he says, in my personal opinion, not only is this an escalation on the map of potential threats, but it should also be regarded as close to a non-conventional weapon threat. Just as no sovereign country would tolerate a non-conventional weapon threat, the same applies here. This is because in 2024, electronic processors manage and operate all the vital systems in the state of Israel: infrastructure, medical systems, security, and military applications. Guys, this Hezbollah is an existential threat to the nation of Israel. As this shows, they cannot afford to allow this enemy to fester on their border and potentially have another October 7th attack, a Pearl Harbor-like attack that takes down the power grid, that takes down the water systems. We have tens of thousands of Israeli citizens that have simply left the north almost 10 months ago because of the threat of attack from Hezbollah, as well as the ongoing attacks from Hezbollah. And the longer this goes on without being addressed, the longer this threat is allowed to remain without being addressed, the more unlikely they are to ever return. So what message does that send to Hezbollah? Well, it sends the message, well, why don't you start striking deeper into Israel? Maybe they'll move back even more, and then we can just take out the whole country with one big barrage. At some point, Israel has to face down this threat. I believe the clock is ticking. Again, those citizens aren't going to move back into their homes until this threat is eliminated, until they feel safe going back. And that makes it an existential threat to the existence of the nation of Israel. And again, once a conflict, an all-out war erupts between Israel and Hezbollah, we've talked about this before, Israel cannot fight that with restrictions from the United States or the UN or all these other groups where they're, well, we'll strike here and maybe they'll back off. They have to go all out because Hezbollah is much more heavily armed than Hamas. They may have the capacity to temporarily overwhelm the missile defense systems of Israel. And if, again, that threat is allowed to remain, if they're able to do that over a protracted period of many months of war, you're looking at a complete shutdown of Israeli society, which is an existential threat to the nation of Israel. And if that's not clear, I want to take a look at this article right here. This appeared in Real Clear Politics earlier in the month, and I believe it's absolutely correct. It's by Gadi Taub. It says, war with Hezbollah is inevitable. And it says, since October 7th, the Biden administration has been preoccupied above all with preventing the Gaza war from spreading to the north and escalating into a no-holds-barred war with Hezbollah. And I believe that's exactly where it's going. Again, you can't fight a hybrid war. We're somewhat committed to this war. Once you commit to it, it must be a commitment to the complete and total elimination of Hezbollah, or Israel's existence hangs in the balance, which it does anyway if it does not eliminate this threat. Although you and I know, the Bible tells us, God says, Israel isn't going anywhere. But in the world's view, and in the view of the people that are making these calculations, that's where things stand. It says, but preventing a war between Israel and Hezbollah will prove harder than the administration realizes. Many tens of thousands of Israelis have been displaced from their homes in the north, and they will not return as long as Hezbollah can fire at them at will. Moreover, Israel has glimpsed the possibility of another Holocaust. Though Hamas is incapable of fulfilling its genocidal aspirations, Iran may well be, and Hezbollah is a crucial part of Tehran's plans. In the long run, Israel simply cannot tolerate such a malignant and formidable enemy on its doorstep. This goes on. It says, we are engaged in a struggle for our survival, said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on June 24th. The struggle is taking place on 7 fronts and is led by Iran. Apart from Hezbollah in the north and Gaza in the south, there are Shiite militias in Syria and West Iraq, backed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hamas forces in the West Bank, the Houthis down south at the Straits of the Red Sea, and Iran itself. We can't tell how many wars it will take to destroy this ring of fire, as the Iranians call it, but we may well be facing a decade of armed struggle with Iran and its proxies. We've come to see that war with Hezbollah is inevitable. We know, too, that it's bound to be the most devastating war yet in terms of loss of Israeli lives, and that it would be very difficult to wage it against American resistance. Difficult, but not impossible. Not waging it, however, will be harder for Israel's leadership, whoever that may be. The war may be delayed, but no Israeli government can leave the north of the country deserted forever. Diplomatic solutions and international guarantees are not likely to work, since people will vote with their feet. They'll probably not return home if they feel their children will face the danger of horrors, the likes of which we saw on October 7th. Israel's government will probably use the diplomacy to buy time to prepare for the coming war. Since the 1956 war and its aftermath, Israel cannot sit idly by and wait for a noose, which may soon be backed up by nuclear weapons, to be tightened around our neck. That is what never again now means. A war with Hezbollah will not be the tail end of the Gaza war, as the administration seems to frame it. It is rather the next step in an inevitable showdown with Iran. And that is absolutely the case. This is a war between Israel and Iran. Iran may use proxies. Maybe this war won't escalate into direct conflict between the geographical with geographical Iran, but this is a war with Iran, and it is inevitable. And I want to take a look at this article right here from The Guardian, because if we read some of the quotes that appear in this, I think it becomes clear that that war is inevitable, that the leaders see it as inevitable. So we start here. This is Benjamin Netanyahu speaking. He says, the state of Israel will not and cannot let this pass. Our response will come, and it will be harsh. And again, this is in result to 12 children being killed by a Hezbollah attack. So many of you, I'm sure, have seen that news. I believe it's inevitable. That's just the latest instance. But it's inevitable we're going to see this conflict escalate into all-out war. So let's scroll down. And we see here how the U.S. is thinking. So it says, in a briefing to reporters, John Kirby, the White House National Security Council communications advisor, called warnings of an all-out war exaggerated. Nobody wants a broader war, and I'm confident we'll be able to avoid such an outcome, Kirby said. I'll let the Israelis speak to whatever their response is going to be. Kirby said talks had been held at multiple levels, but would not detail the guts of those conversations. We scroll down further, and we read this. It says, the Prime Minister has made clear that Israel will not allow this terror. Hezbollah will pay a heavy price that it has not paid thus far, said David Mincer, spokesman for Netanyahu's office. One way or another, whether through diplomacy or other means, our north will be secured. A senior Israeli defense official told Reuters that Israel wanted to hurt Hezbollah, but did not wish to drag the region into an all-out war. Two other officials said the country was preparing for the possibility of a few days of fighting. I would argue that they're preparing for much more than that, and have been since October 7th. Well, let's read on. It says, the U.S. news website Axios, citing one Israeli official and one U.S. official, said the White House had cautioned Israel that should it choose to hit areas of the Lebanese capital, Beirut, the situation would likely spiral out of control. Danny Citrinkowicz, an analyst with Israel's Institute for National Security Studies, said, we are as close as we have ever been to another war between Israel and Hezbollah. What they did, murdering young boys and girls, requires a different response. But the question is, what will be different? The Israeli calculation that it can conduct a large volume of strikes deeper into Lebanese territory, strike targets in Beirut, or even hit facilities belonging to the Lebanese state rather than the militant group, could prove to be high-risk strategies, he added. What will determine the level of escalation is Hezbollah's response. There are people saying this will be back and forth for a couple of days, but it takes two to tango. Each side wants to raise the bar, but we don't have an off-ramp for this. Hezbollah will have to retaliate, and then what will Israel do? Yes, the United States administration is pressuring both Israel and the Lebanese intently, but it's hard to see how it can contain the level of escalation. And again, guys, I don't think it can. Now, it's clear why the United States wants to stop this from taking place, because an all-out war between Hezbollah and Iran, or Israel and Hezbollah, is really an all-out war between Israel and Iran. And I've read other stories that say Israel has spoken directly to Iran, said if that happens, Iran's oil infrastructure would be one of their targets. And we know that Iran also has the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. We've talked about that time and again. If we see an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah, which again I think is inevitable, then it will have global implications. It will be a huge shock to the world. It will shake the world economy in a way that it's never been shaken before. We're going to have probably $300 a barrel oil, gasoline prices in the United States well in excess of $10 a gallon. So it's very clear why the United States does not want that, especially in an election year. But guys, it's inevitable. Israel's very existence is at threat, or is being threatened. Israel must act. That's the calculation on the ground. I believe they've made that calculation immediately following October 7th. Why hasn't it happened yet? Well, it takes time to put plans together, to gather resources, to gather personnel. And to prepare for that conflict, especially when you're already fighting a war in the south, you don't want to immediately open up a two-front war, but I believe that time is coming. This can't linger on for years. I would think by the end of this year, at the latest, we're going to see an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah, and there will be global implications to that in the oil markets and the financial markets. Whether or not there are biblical prophetic implications remains to be seen. We talked in previous videos about Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17 and whether those passages would apply to an escalation in this conflict. That remains to be seen. So if we see that playing out, we'll talk about it then. If you want to learn about how that could be, just go look up Psalm 83, Isaiah 17 on this channel, and you'll see previous videos where we've talked about that. But guys, pray for Israel. Pray for all the people in this region, because I think any day now, this could become all-out war with global implications. So we need to be in prayer. We need to be in prayer for world leaders, for Israel, for all the people directly involved into this, because unfortunately, when you have warfare like this, it means people are going to lose their lives, and we don't want that to happen to anyone. So make sure you're in prayer for Israel. What do you think? Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong and that this isn't inevitable. If you think that's not the case, leave your comments below. Try to explain why you think that is, what the alternative solution is. Because I think war is inevitable. And we know what the Bible says. We know what God's position is. Israel is there to stay. Israel isn't going anywhere. But they can't continue with this threat on their border, and that's why I think this is an inevitable war that's coming sooner rather than later. So again, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, restack buttons. And God willing, I will see you on Friday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.